okay. And so we had this meeting, and I'm sitting there, I believe Mary was there too. And well, what's the value? Do you have an idea what the value of this mine is? Yeah, around 40 million. Well, I came from BC land, and I knew how much money was in the bank. And I knew that Western Region didn't have the money, but I was thinking, well, let's see, we can take 20 million from Southeast, because they never spend their money. We can take maybe 10 million from Omaha, because they never spend their money, and I'm trying to figure out where we're going to get this 40 million, and the people I left in the DC office are going to kill me. And so anyway, I forget how long it took us to acquire it. It did take forever, because we're going out to the mine, and the owners were two little guys that had been in the Second World War. This mine was in operation in the 40s, and you have to do a chain of title. It was this thick. I swear it was. And Ralph Minehan, our attorney's going like this. We didn't know what to do. We called everybody in the country. Nobody knew what to do. Nobody wanted to touch it. But anyway, we did get it appraised, and we did acquire for $2.5 million, which I stole the money from Washington to acquire it. Lands isn't always supported, because we're the bad guys. We come in and we take this land, and we always take it for less than it's worth. These acres don't include the ranches, and the ranches are very unique. They're not.
Okay, that's basically a BLM video, which you can catch on my website. And it's basically BLM coming in and talking about how they're doing their land grabs. And this is what the Bundys had an issue over, and what the Hammonds have an issue over now in Oregon, where the Bundys are at, in terms of the BLM coming in and trying to strong arm so that they can take this land, and then they essentially sell it to somebody else. In Nevada, it was selling to a company that was repped by an attorney that is Harry Reid's son. And this land they say for the government, because the government wants to mine the minerals and stuff that are located there. A travesty, truly a travesty with how BLM's operating. This is Francesco Abbruzzino. This is the Uncensored Report. It is a one-man operation, from everything from the research to the show to the production to the websites to the social media. It is unedited and unscripted, especially today. I'm actually running late. I'm probably not getting this out by 11 because it's 10 o'clock now. And I was awakened last night out of a deep coma. I had to rush out and basically save my daughter, who had a flat on a crazy river road place. So I did that. We had to leave the car there because we couldn't do the spare, and I had to go back and take care of that this morning. And I've been running around doing the fatherly stuff, trying to get our car going. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's look at some of the previews on the news and see what's happening out there on the scoop. Basically, let's see. I put this up, FBI, it's off to Twitter. I get a lot of stories off Twitter a lot of times, and this is just a guy, and anything to do with production of child porn or any type of pornography, I'm going to put up there, and hopes of trying to help the federal authorities, any authorities, get this guy. Unfortunately, it's been up there, an hour? Only 412 people reached. That's disturbing. And you'll see, I'll go down the list and I'll tell you stories that I'll indicate a story that's just pure fluff, meaningless, like Whoopi Goldberg. You'll see, because I noticed that had a big reach. It's a story I've already put out with the video. I put it out again. It's got another tremendous reach. But why is that going out and getting more of a reach than a person that's wanted for production of child pornography? That is crazy. Where are our priorities? This story, a man turned himself in after he alleged ISIS. He took the ISIS pledge and he turned himself in. This is a fluff piece. Here we go, fluff piece. 2,115 people about a hockey player that got completely knocked out during the fight. But only a couple hundred are sharing this guy that's wanted for production of child pornography. Only 700 here are worried about this fact that this lieutenant governor, for a couple years, him and his staff and everybody else, well, not lieutenant governor, he's the governor, sat there and allowed the residents of Flint to drink this tainted water. They do have an email in there where it said Rick Snyder's chief of staff believed Flint's poisoned water was not the state's responsibility. And he mentioned the state health officials who worried that the issue could turn into a political football, which it has. This is a tragic story just about a poor kid. I was reading it. I wanted to share it and get it out there. Let's see. This is an officer that was shot at point blank range. I believe it happened in another country, and he returned fire. This is someone who talks about the first Black History Month, and then why not have a Whiteness History Month? Not getting a lot of traction at all, only 592. The storms are coming. This talks about the crucial items you may need for your pantry, especially with the severe storms that are heading your way, especially if you're in the D.C. area. Former Defense Secretary Robert Gates has turned into a harsh critic of the president and basically saying that Obama likes to think he's the smartest guy in the room. Whoopi Goldberg, there it is. That thing's already gone out to almost 18,000 people. Amazing. The attention that gets focused on that. Yeah, you got to hear a 12-year-old girl that died from complications of a flu. Well, at least 2,400 people are interested in that. I'm always looking for stories. If you got any scoop, go ahead and share them with me. I post, I'll post anonymously if you want. If you don't trust it, you can look at my local, The Scoop, Venice Scoop, Sarasota Scoop. I post anonymously all the time on there, and I don't think I've ever outed any of my anonymous people. Or we could just do your first name like traditionally I do. This kid, Sandy, police seek help in locating this 12-year-old individual. Virginia man. This is just a weird story. You got this guy. He's found a Virginia man charged after he's found with what a local newspaper called suspicious bacon, and he allegedly found face down behind a dog kennel with a gun and bacon covered in some unknown substance. They didn't know what he was up to. Moonshine, I just saw it. Wow, 192 proof moonshine, and for some reason it made me laugh, so I put it up there. Let's see, me and my BFF, just some humor in the morning to start your day off. U.S. takes control of Ramallah airfield in Syria. Why this is important? This came from, I believe, Syrian girl, and basically she's out there covering all the atrocities that are happening in Syria. Why this is important? A lot of people might say, well, that's great, they got an air base in Syria. The problem is the president is still Assad. Assad has not invited us in. We're just going in there and setting up camp, just like we're in there bombing. He has not authorized us. He's authorized Iran and Russia to go in there and Hezbollah, but nobody else. It'd be like somebody coming into our country uninvited and doing this stuff. We wouldn't want it. We wouldn't tolerate it. Police are still looking for this young man that disappeared when he was out with some family in the woods. It's been a few days. He's only 2, and it's pretty cold up there, so it's starting to get a little concerning. Some more humor, some more fluff, what I call the fluff pieces. And let's see, Facebook says, oh, let's take a pause. There we go, okay. What was that story? Man sitting airborne like a rag doll after his car crashed. Fluff story. Florida gets 15 years for killing a cross-dressing voodoo priest lover. Okay, the flag, this is a bit of a diplomatic thing where they put the flag upside down, and the Russians obviously not happy about it. When it comes to these flag issues, why would you hang it upside down? It's like if someone put our stars and stripes upside down. This, I just thought it was funny that German government's putting out a poster on Muslim refugees and telling them, please don't poop in our showers and don't rape our women. And the irony there. UK came out, they did an investigation. They found that there's probable involvement of Putin in this guy Litvinenko. He was somebody that he came out very critical of Putin, and just before he died, he said Putin's trying to kill me, or gave some indications of that. Human remains, I just thought this was funny. Human remains were lost in the mail, and I thought that old mail service, I tell you what. Slow Losey, this talks about slow, lonely death in prison for a 94-year-old who's serving time with drug charges, and it just chronicles his life. Hollywood, how they are privately disturbed that Hillary was such a vindictive, going after these women that accused Bill Clinton of raping them. Migrant camp burned down. What do we got here? A 70-year-old finds his girlfriend. He's dating her. This here is an interesting story. The run on the banks, which begins in Italy, as the Italian bank stocks are starting to collapse. I'm going to cover it in detail, but it's interesting because of I have sisters that live there, and after that whole Greece incident where they closed down the banks, and I believe the people got 60 cents back on the dollar. I told her, you need to pull your money out of the bank because Italy's not far behind that, and fortunately my sister apparently listened to me. Methane leaks are impacting the impact zone is doubled there. Again, important story environmentally for the health and everything, but only 285 people are interested in that. But then you get this where the Buffalo Bills hire an NFL first-time coach, a female, and there's 1,200 people interested in that. So not sure why there's such a disconnect. Vietnam was upset that China was over there landing a plane over in the South China Sea on the disputed islands. Now they're a little upset again about this oil rig, and they want it moved, and China's like, yeah, right, well, get us to move it. The El Nino bringing this great white over to California where a fisherman hooked it. That's a little story of praying chihuahua gets adopted. Just the degradation of our college system where individuals thought that Judge Judy was on the Supreme Court. These are kids that are out that are college graduates, recent college graduates, and 10% of them thought she was the Supreme Court justice. Obama saying, yeah, these guys should be upset in Flint, and I'm disturbed about it. It's really disturbing. If those were my kids, I'd be upset. Yet, he's going to Detroit. I think it's for a fundraiser, and Flint's only about an hour away. I'm from Detroit. Flint's only like an hour away, if that, and he won't even go out there and visit them. But he's devastated by it. Okay. More fluff there. Let's see. Lynch defends Obama's gun actions. But the senator said, you're totally off. It's in the Bill of Rights. Interesting thing. There was a senator or congressman out of, I think it was North Carolina. I forget the guy's name. I was watching it on Fox and Friends this morning. And the guy came out and he said, look, for all journalists, we need you to register. Just like you're doing with the gun owners. Register, and we're going to monitor everything. Journalists got totally upset. That's a violation of our First Amendment. You can't make us register. And they went through that whole rigmarole. And he was trying to drive home a point that, well, you're journalists, you're fighting for the First Amendment, but you could care less about the Second Amendment. And it's fine to register all these people with the guns because the media, major media, is in bed with the Obama administration on this move. Ingenious, and it's gotten everybody talking about it. A great comparison. What was his name? Congressman Bill something. I can't remember. They talk about, that Zika virus. A lot of people concerned, especially if you're pregnant, and they want you to be cognizant of some of the impacts of it. The bear market. We're going to check the market again. The futures were down, not significantly, but they were down before I came on. Market is open now, so we're going to check it out in a second. More Americans are living past their 100th birthday, especially the women, the female, that says. This is just a fluff piece about a guy that decided to go out and snowboard in an avalanche-prone area. He says there were no signs, and the sugar boat's a little upset with him. That twin thing again, where they're holding hands, and this is a viral video, put it up there. How to defrost your windshield, that's getting a lot of traction, especially with the storms up north. Over 12,000, almost 12,500 people are paying attention to that. Moldova, this banksters ransacked Moldova. Again, similar situation as to what's going on in Italy. Oil is now cheaper than the barrel. Barrels cost more than the oil in there, so you're going to start seeing the real impact of this stuff on countries like Saudi Arabia and elsewhere. Fast and Furious not getting a lot of traction out there, but they found a rifle with El Chapo, and within his catch, they found a Fast and Furious rifle. Also, coincidentally, yesterday, they came out and said, look, Obama, we appreciate Supreme Court came out and said, we appreciate the fact that you're trying to prevent Fast and Furious information from getting out to prevent your buddy Eric Holder from being seen as committing any improprieties, but you're going to have to release it. Now, Obama's going to appeal that, and then before he goes, he's going to go ahead and pardon everybody, and you're not going to see anything from it. It's ridiculous, folks. 5 dogs attacked a lady was injured after being attacked by 6 dogs. 5 of them were killed off. These were pet dogs, my understanding. That was an interesting story out of Sanford. 2 young dopes with 20 pounds of weed. They got paranoid, so they called the cops on themselves. Interesting. A head transplant. Surgeon claims first monkey head transplant in China. Detroit schools closed down again, and this was due to a sick out. They're saying, look, these schools are deteriorating. The pictures all over the internet. We need money to fix these schools up. Good luck there. You can't even get money to fix Flint's water, but Detroit's got their dire situation there, and they're trying to draw attention to it. The school teachers are. Oregon defies feds and slams in action against the lawlessness of the Hammonds out there, and on the government property. Not sure if I'm buying what they're doing, but okay. A columnist comes out and says that free speech is an expression of white supremacy. God, where did they get this stuff? DA, man stole woman's Facebook profile to lure them in and rape them. Some sickos out there. This lady, she forgot she had heroin under her breast. That's a poor girl you want to bring home to mama right there, I tell you what. All right, and these are essentially, I think, last night's stories. So, homeless woman gave birth at the Vatican, and they found her a home after that incident. Let's go ahead and check the markets. Let's shut this one down. Let's check the markets over here. And it's positive. Look at that, though. It looks like it opened down significantly, and then it just shot up. Not sure what brought the shot up. I don't see anything. I saw the unemployment numbers, which were greater than they expected, the jobless numbers, but I'm not sure why it shot up. So it's up right now 100 points, and NASDAQ up 30 points. Let's see if we could see where oils are at. Crude oil, they don't have it listed up there. No idea. Let's see if we highlight over it. Looks like 28.41, so it's just above the 28 mark. All right. That is covering the general news, and now we get to opine about some of the more serious issues. And obviously the market, and I've been hitting on the market a lot. I almost feel like this is a financial show for some reason, because I've been hitting on the market so much lately, and that's due to the fact that the impact that it's had over the first couple weeks, almost 3 weeks into January now, and it's had a significant impact. Trillions of dollars are gone. And something has happened that has signaled a recession every single time that it's occurred. And this is going back. They went back and they look at the records all the way down to World War I. And they said that 16 times since 1919, there have been at least 8 month-over-month declines in industrial production during the preceding 12-month period. And each of these 16 instances, the U.S. economy has plunged into a recession. And you know why I have it on my head real quick. I talked about the, the shipping index. I forget what the term is, but the shipping index. And I found out yesterday, not one ship this month has gone from China to the United States to bring any supplies, any products, which is really, really unusual, very strange. And if that's the case, then then this market's in bad shape. If you look at Baltic Index, dry index is what it is. Sorry, I just had that in my head. I'm like, I can't believe not one ship out of China. So the question that's out there is, can we avoid some kind of major downturn? There's a bunch of numbers out there that are screaming that we're going to be in a recession. That the recession is here. It got the global financial markets. They're crumbling, although they're up 100 today. It's got a long ways to go. It would essentially take a miracle of epic proportions to pull out of this tailspin. And yet many people are absolutely convinced it will not happen. They don't think it's going to happen at all. You know, you got our GDP growth for the fourth quarter, and it's already just a small fraction of 1%. So it wouldn't be a surprise to see a negative number posted at all on that. Then you got the bad news that's been pouring in on the economy. We've learned about the weak growth rate over in China and their GDP, but you can't always trust that number. You got BP, oil companies, BP cutting jobs. You got a ton of unemployed out there. I think I covered 43 of them when it went bankrupt last month. Johnson & Johnson plans on eliminating 3,000 jobs. A lot of things are getting ugly out there. You got major firms outside the energy industry that are cutting payrolls too, like Morgan Stanley. They're out there and they're looking for ways to start cutting their costs. And essentially the whole environment is changing. And when you start to get tough, big companies like Morgan or Johnson, and they start getting rid of people, it starts to remind, and you look at the economy, it starts to remind a lot of people what happened back in 2008. And is it starting to happen all over? And will it be greater than 2008? You're going to see millions of Americans lose their jobs. And if that's the case, there's going to be some hard years ahead of us. We're going to have some major financial turmoil. And it's going to grip the planet. It's not just us. You know, like I said, China, they came out, they announced that they grew at 6.8% in the fourth quarter, which was in line with expectations. And the markets responded positively. I think we essentially almost landed up flatline that day. But this is indeed a huge problem. And that's because the GDP figures coming out of China essentially are meaningless. If you believe the Chinese economy actually grew at 6.8% rate during the fourth quarter, then there's this bridge. It's called the Manhattan Bridge. And we'd like to sell it to you. Are you interested? You know, China, and I said this over and over, virtually all the numbers coming out of China over the past few months, over the past few years, basically tell us that the Chinese economy is shrinking, especially when you hear that no boats have left there to the United States with any product this month. So you got to question that 6.8 number just like you question everything else. And you know, and you look at other things, like China hasn't admitted that they've had economic, financial, or recession type issues since back in '76. And over the years, they just keep talking about how great their numbers are, and it's something of national pride. So it's not something you're going to hear China readily admit to. Their market would have to implode drastically before they would say something. And, you know, I understand, too, here in the U.S., the numbers are fraudulent. Our inflationary number is fraudulent. Our employment number is fraudulent. But in China, they go to some major extremes, some extremely ridiculous extremes. Extremely ridiculous extremes. But the whole Chinese economy is fueled by their exports. And if they're not exporting, like I said, not one ship's come to the U.S. this month, then you got a problem there, folks. You got a problem there. So we're experiencing this major global financial crisis. And you're seeing it nowhere else is more evident than, like I said, in Italy. I got two sisters that live there. I used to live there. I got aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, everything that live there. And, you know, I saw what was happening in Greece. I know Italy's economy is not that much better, and this was a few months ago. So I told my sister, I said, how much do you have in the bank? And she told me, and I'm like, do this, do X, do Y. And I just to cover yourself, because you don't want to be stuck in a situation like in Greece, where they shut the banks down for what was it, a week or 2 weeks? And then they give you 60 cents on the dollar. And the other thing, too, is there was some capital controls, some cash controls. They can only take out X amount. They question you if you try to take out more money. It was starting to get dire there. And you look at the economy. Now, my sister's in Calabria. It's worse than Rome and everything. But when I went back there, I was there a year ago, I think. And I could see, even in Rome, that the economy is not doing well. You could see that. What I noticed was that the city seemed to be dirty. It seemed to be like it was falling apart a little bit, which was telling me that the government doesn't have the money to get out there and clean it. There's no money in the coffers. And you're seeing that meltdown. You know, the Italian bank stocks, they're collapsing. And the Italians, like my sister and everybody else, are starting to get nervous. They're out there and they're starting to pull a ton of money out of the banks. So there's essentially a run on the banks, and you got this one bank, Monte dei Paschi, is one of the ones that are worse off. 1/3 of their loans are non-performing, which doesn't surprise me. And so their stock price is falling. Essentially, they went out there and they were making a bunch of frivolous loans, like most Italian banks, to individuals that just did not make financial sense. And they're taking a huge bath on it. And so you have people defaulting on those. They're pulling all their money out of these banks. The stocks are plummeting. And normally, you only see numbers like what we're seeing over there in Italy during some great major financial crisis. And that's why, again, the indicators are all there, but nobody wants to accept them. You know, and I remember listening to the talking heads today, and they're like, you know, the U.S. economy is great. I don't know what's going on. The whole Chinese thing, it's really weird because we're doing great, but are we doing great? I had to turn the guy off because I'm like, there's no jobs. The quality of jobs suck. The pays, the wages suck. The cost of living is tremendous with rent, with food, with everything. How is it great out there? How can you sit there and tell me it's great? The global stocks, they've entered this bear market. The people that provide the jobs and help move this economy along have lost trillions of dollars. How's that going to have that trickle-down effect going to impact us? And sure, our markets are in better shape than everywhere else, but the severity of the situation is going to be felt here, folks. It has to be felt here. And we're facing some serious issues. You know, and you got situations like Italy. Will that be the next Greece? Greece is the 44th largest economy on the planet. Italy is the 8th. Can you imagine the impact? I mean, we saw the impact of the 44th largest economy. How about the 8th largest economy, Italy, going through what Greece went through? It's just going to pull the rest of Europe down in a tailspin. And, you know, so this whole European crisis isn't finished, and we should be concerned about it. As Europeans, you should be concerned about it. I would. And the problem is that most of the individuals, Europe here, you're almost like brainwashed, if you will. You know, you got corporate, political people out there, and they're constructing this powerful vision of what you should see, what you should believe, what you should know. Special interests are out there too, and they try to sway the public opinion through propaganda, essentially. Blatant lies are often put out on TV regarding everything, regarding the terrorism. You know, when you got Obama saying that the ISIS is JV when they were not JV. He knew they weren't JV. Food, saying that the food prices are fine, saying that GMO is great. War, you know, saying we don't have troops there, we got trainers. Well, those are troops there, folks, and they're fighting. They're not trainers, but that's their way of sending in troops, special operations and stuff, and calling them trainers. Healthcare, Obamacare, you don't have to pay for those doctors. Your rates won't go up. You this, that. You won't lose your insurance. And what they're doing is they fashion it to sway the public opinion and condition us viewers that are generally glued to this TV to accept what has become essentially a destructive norm. They're out there. They're practicing this manipulation, this controlling of the public opinion. And they're doing it through distorted media messages. I mean, if you sit there, everybody watches NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox. They all send out the same message. People think that's the only news that's out there in the world. Then they go to my site and they see, wait, there's a lot more news out there. There's a lot more going on. But unfortunately, you don't get a lot of traction on them. I look at these numbers. I can put serious issues out there, issues that will impact individuals, issues that individuals should be worried about, and they were not. They're too concerned about the guy that went out on Fell Army and did something stupid on a video. And it's all part of this whole brainwashing industry where they sit there, they figure out how to spin information. And the government spends it to the journalists spin it through their media, corporate media has pressure on them. It's never really clear just how much the truth the journalists, the media receive, because the news industry has become very complacent. And you see that on all major media. You'd have to be blind not to see it. And the messages that they essentially present is the message that the corporate powers, the government powers, the special interest powers want put out to you. That's why they spend these millions of dollars. That's why, I don't know if you know this, there's essentially 6 conglomerates out there that own 90% of the media. General Electric, News Corp, Disney, Viacom, Time Warner, CBS. They function under different names, so you're not really aware of it. The perception is that it's not happening. But they're controlling the media and they're controlling the message. They're brainwashing you. And that's why alternative media is key and why it's on the rise. You got this Cheryl Atkinson. She's a investigator, reporter with CBS. And she explained how they call it AstroTurf, or fake grassroots movements. And they use them to go out there and spin the information, not only to influence journalists, but also the public opinion that's out there. And make it hard for people to try to separate fact from fiction. You got a couple of resources out there. You got Wikipedia pages, but those are monitored by corporations. Social media presence, Facebook, Twitter. But those, generally, most of those accounts are run by paid professionals. I know because I'm one of them. I'll go out there, people pay me, and I'll run their Twitter account, their Facebook account. Or they're secretly funding these nonprofit organizations, these NGOs, to create third-party support and web presence. Search engine optimization web pages, such as the blogs and the third-party sites, they generally are out there supporting a specific agenda. And the list goes on, but the general public goes there, they read it, they believe it, and they go with it. It's all part of that brainwashing. And these methods are used to give people the impression that there's a widespread support for an agenda, when in reality, there is no support. It doesn't exist. And these tactics are used to discredit or criticize those that disagree. They'll come out and call them conspiracy theorists because you're saying something that they don't want you to communicate, and people will listen and buy into that and say he's wrong. Someone like Alex Jones is crazy because he's been labeled by these people, by this global and this world government, one world government. And it's interesting how all that works. And I don't think people understand it. I don't think people get it. Not sure why. And I wish they would. But they just don't get it. And what all this is doing too, and this all rolls into politics. Because you follow a lot of the communications that are coming out. You fell in love with Obama because he was going to give you the world, and he told you essentially what he wanted to hear. And same, Trump is essentially doing that. Same with Hillary and everybody else. The biggest problem though with Hillary is I think she's in dire situation. I think this email scandal, Benghazi, everything, there's rumors that she's going to get indicted. And they don't know what they're going to do if she gets indicted. Your leading candidate out there is going to be Bernie Sanders. He's breathing down her neck. And he's got that whole Democratic establishment concerned. They're feeling the burn. And by all accounts, Sanders is looking more and more like a legitimate contender. Which brings up a good question are we in society, America, ready for a socialism? And they went out and they did this poll. And this was a new poll. Who did it? I can't remember who did it, but essentially 43% of the likely voters came out, are going out to the Democratic Iowa caucus, said that they would use the word socialist to describe themselves. 43% believe they are socialist. Then you had a national Gallup poll that came out last June, found 47% of all voters nationwide would vote for socialist. So, is America ready for socialism? It's sounding like they are. I mean, those are pretty astonishing numbers. And we're essentially a generation removed from an era when presidential candidates like Bush could effectively deep six a campaign of somebody like Michael Dukakis by calling him a liberal, by indicating that he might be a socialist. And socialism's finding its way back basically due to the charisma of Bernie Sanders. And it's to the point where Americans are facing the very real prospect that they may be electing a socialist to president next year. And there's some contributing factors to them, some obvious, some not obvious, with this whole love affair for socialism. And one is that the old socialist nemesis, the Soviet Unions, the Red Chinas, along with their satellite states, have undergone this great social political change that a lot of people view as positive. Or you look at Scandinavia. They have some of the highest standard of living, safety nets, they're cheerful, they're well-to-do citizenry, and they face socialism. That's a social society essentially there. And Sanders has no problem telling people that. Just look at there, Scandinavia. And the other factors in socialism, the popularity of the ongoing economic crisis there. A lot of people blame the capitalists. The laissez-faire attitude of capitalists have brought on this recession and a lot of our economic issues that are out there. And Americans, they find faith and freedom was severely shaken when you got something like what happened back in the 30s. You know, so whenever they're shaken like that, they're concerned, there's change. You get people like FDR, he came out and said, here's the New Deal, socialism all the way. And basically, it's new, unconstitutional regulations. It essentially went out there and just flowered big government on everybody. New gun laws, new regulations, banks, finance, market, fiat money, Social Security, federal welfare. And people want that. People want that. I don't know why, but they want that helping hand from the government. And that is indeed socialism. That whole New Deal process that FDR had was socialism. And unfortunately, the truth is that America has been partly socialist country for most of this 20th century. Even through the likes of FDR, have essentially been loath to call socialism by its real name. He would have never admitted that. Socialism is no longer the guiding philosophy of liberal Democrats, though. Not of them only, because you got Republicans in there, Republican politicians, and they're promoting socialist programs, agendas, institutions, like Social Security, Medicare, Federal Reserve System. They're all socialist. And the difference between Hillary Clinton and Bernard Sanders is the substance. Which one's more of a hardcore socialist? So are we prepared? I think we are. If you look at the polling numbers, people want it. They what's the word? They align themselves as being socialist. And so it may be a direction that we're going in. It's a little discouraging. You know, Bernie Sanders gets in there. Our whole society's he's going to destroy America. I would rather see Hillary in there than him in terms of ideology that they would put forth. Now, Hillary's just a criminal, fraudulent little liar, but let's not get going on that. I did want to cover this other thing that involves the Navy SEALs, because they're not hearing a lot of it because they didn't really advertise it like Jade Helm, but this is essentially the same thing as what happened with Jade Helm. And the Navy SEALs are essentially starting a series of war games that are going to take place, and it's going to take place in a few dozen locations along the coastline in Washington State. And it's going to go on for about 2 years. And like I said, you probably didn't hear a lot about it because unlike the whole Jade Helm exercise, which took place last year, it's not being really reported through alternative or mainstream news. And it's received little attention at all. And people just aren't hearing about it. And there's a shocking reason why there's been so little awareness about this training exercise. And I'm going to cover why you should be aware of it and why you should be concerned about it. If you look at it, this exercise, all the documents surrounding the war games, they were labeled by the Navy in such a way that a FOIA request, if you submit it and want information on it and try to discover what's going on, would not pick it up with that FOIA. So and they didn't give out any public notice. There was no relevant government agencies were alerted. There's no local, state, federal, nothing. Nobody was really alerted about it. And I get Navy SEALs can be secretive. I get that, but given the nature of these training exercises, you would think that it's prudent to let local police know about it. They don't even know about it. And you're going to have these SEALs. They're going to be coming on land. They'll be equipped with simulated weapons, and they'll be popping up at state national parks, residential areas, tribal lands, beaches, marinas, everywhere. And they're doing this with little regard to the public's perception or awareness of what's going on. Which is essentially, it's illegal what they're doing. Illegal to do it without consulting anybody. And could you imagine if this happened here, like in Venice, Florida? I walk out the door, I see all kinds of SEALs. Nobody's warned us. Would you think that you're walking through a park and looking out your window and you saw special operation guys creeping around with guns? What would you think? I mean, there's Navy SEALs are good at being camouflaged, but they're not that good, and I would see them creeping around. And they're bound to run into civilians that are going to get scared, wondering what the heck's going on. Which is probably the whole point of this exercise. But it's troubling. Not only just they're disregarding the federal law, they basically are actively finding ways to completely subvert it. And what this whole thing does is it gets the citizenry used to seeing armed forces in our streets. Much like Jade Helm, it's providing real world training for our military personnel, and that's only a small part of this mission. The real overreaching objective is to assimilate our soldiers, our sailors, our Marines to the idea that one day they may be ordered to use their skills against Americans. And to condition Americans that when they come in, it's not a big deal. They're designed to assimilate the American public to a constant military presence without being concerned. And, this operation is small in scope when you compare it to something like Jade Helm, but it's another step forward in the government's goal to get everyone used to the military police state. And that's why you should be concerned about it. I'm not sure why it's not on a lot of the media out there, but it should be. And you're not seeing this type of communication anywhere. I did want to talk about, let me see what time we got. Okay. I got two issues that I wanted to bring up. Let's talk about the internet one, and I'm going to try to get on this cache issue. I'm sitting here, I'm looking at the list of stuff I want to cover, and I have like 50 news items, and I'll never get to them. I just don't have enough time in the day. When you're doing a hour-long show, it's different than having 3 hours, being able to communicate everything and cover everything thoroughly. Sometimes there's just not enough time, and especially today when I didn't have time to really prepare because I was running around doing the fatherly thing for my daughter. But I did want to talk about it. It's an article that came out and talked about how there's a senior Homeland Security guy, Abbruzzino, and he wants to outlaw anonymity on the internet, which to me is important. Anonymity, because especially locally, I'm big into social media, and you constantly see fake names out there, anonymity. And here's what happens when this is on my local sites. You'll have individuals, they'll come on and they'll say, why are the helicopters flying around? They will get attacked. You get so many trolls on there, and they just come on and attack, and it gets nasty. And next thing you know, they're like, can you take the thread down? I can't take it anymore. So what they started doing was just going anonymous and putting up their questions, putting up their statements, or they use a fake ID. But this guy wants to do away with it. And you got to wonder, whose privacy are we protecting? Balancing rights to anonymity with rights to public safety. That's the question. That's what they're asking. That's what this guy Eric Bennett's asking. You know, and they note that due to terrorism, due to child sexual exploitation, that there's an overriding interest to review the privacy information and maybe get rid of the anonymity. See, and this is where they come in. They suggest some type of license for internet users. And the analogy they used is when a person's driving a car, she or he agrees to a license plate. The license plate identifies the individual. Law enforcement can then ID the person if they are involved in some kind of legal infraction or something that's against the public interest. They can take action. And they say, why can't we have a license plate for the digital superhighway that we can identify the individual? Which you almost essentially do if you're using IPs, because my IP is going to come from here. You're going to know it's me. Somehow my daughter bought songs. Her boyfriend told her to buy a song on somewhere. She did it. It was a copyright infringement, and they tracked down the IP to me, and they emailed me and said, hey, you do this again, you're in trouble. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And that's how I found out that my daughter did it. But this Barnett guy, he's wrong. You know, currently the police are out there and they're using this high-resolution digital cameras. They're mounted on their vehicles. They scan your license plate. Thousands of citizens who haven't committed a crime are ran through the database. And they're gathering all this information. When you drive by, we just had these things put up on the highway where every so many miles it'll tell you to Bee Ridge, there's 5 miles. It'll take you 5 to 7 minutes. The data points that are reading that are taking in all your license plate numbers, all your data, everything, so they know where you're at constantly. And this is essentially collecting data on you when you haven't committed a crime. Unconstitutional. It bypasses the Fourth Amendment. You should have some type of probable cause before you do something like that. And there's no probable cause when you're just out there grabbing all this information. And anonymous communications, what they do is that they essentially have an important place in the political and social discourse out there. And the Supreme Court came in and sided with that. They said anonymous free speech is protected under the First Amendment. This came down in 1995 under McIntyre versus the Ohio Elections Commission. And basically came out stating that anonymity is a shield for tyranny of the majority. So when you're out there and you're considering the behavior of government and its obsession with gathering political information or information on their opponents, practice of gathering license plate numbers at political rallies, the idea that every person on the internet must have a singular identifier designed to identify them, monitor them, possibly discredit them. And like I said, the states already have the ability to track most people. The NSA specializes in this stuff. They know what you're doing. We got our IP address, like I said. They don't need to go to these great lengths that they're disclosing here. And it's concerning. And as individuals, we should all be concerned about this. I wonder if I have enough time to... I wanted to talk a little bit about... Yeah, because this will be real quick. Because I've talked about the war on cash a lot. And you got it out there. I'll just touch on it briefly. And it's designed basically to control us. The driving factor is to control individuals. And I saw this article came out and it talked about the inflation in Argentina and how they're preparing to use larger denomination banknotes. And it's something most Western governments won't do. And they're going to do this, Argentina, as a way, because the inflation, like I said, and this article compared it to the United States. And with the Secretary of the Treasury, they can print up denominations up to $10,000. But the Treasury has not done that, anything greater than $100 since back in 45. And they've started doing $100, I think, back in the late 60s. But with the inflation basically eroding in the Federal Reserve's eyes, they are starting to question if it makes sense more than ever to issue larger denomination notes. I don't see the Fed doing this. Here's the issue, because you got this whole war on drugs and stuff, the war on cash. Authorities don't want to issue bills that are greater than $100. They want a cashless society. They don't want anything over 100 that could possibly facilitate money laundering. And by maintaining this policy of printing notes that are larger than 100, and by increasing the reporting requirements on such transactions, the Treasury Department has pushed more and more financial transactions into that whole electronic arena. Use your credit card. The war on cash. But I like what Argentina is doing, but I don't think we're going to see that here. It was an interesting article on the comparison of the two countries and how they're handling the war on cash, whereas one essentially doesn't have one and the United States does have one. All right, I'm going to end this. I think I've been on for 50 minutes. I got to end it a little early because I got to try to get it uploaded in 10 minutes, which is going to be very difficult to do, but I'm going to try it. This has been Francesco Abbruzzino. Remember to go to my website, theuncensoredreport.com. Remember to share that. Share the Scoop National News Facebook page. Tell everybody about all my local pages. Send all the traction. Subscribe to this channel. Do all that stuff. Help promote, help educate, inspire, affect change. This has been Francesco Abbruzzino. Everybody have a great day.